I think a lot of it too is it's not necessarily, us versus them type thing, but being aware of the things that we carry that we don't know we've chosen to carry. And I think a lot of it is becoming aware of what are all the things, the little mental checklists, the way that we just navigate setting the emotional tone of a room, that has a load.
Yes.
And what if we stop caring for that and allow others to take responsibility?
This episode is sponsored by Ashley Breland, the Boundary Therapist, and Breland Counseling. I'm Erica.
And I'm CJ.
And you're listening to the Her Podcast. We're excited about today's episode because we've got Adrianne Vangool and Lisa Greig joining us. Adrianne is an author, licensed physical therapist, and certified yoga therapist who focuses on making yoga and physiotherapy accessible to everyone. And Lisa, a social worker, educator, and true speaker. Today, we're diving into a topic that affects us all, the MotherLoad, which, spoiler alert, isn't just for moms. The MotherLoad is about those demanding roles we find ourselves in, whether at home or in the workplace. It's the endless juggling act and the constant feeling of not doing enough. In today's conversation with Adrianne and Lisa, we explore this collective exhaustion and share practical tips to decrease our stress levels. We unpack the demands we place on ourselves, learn how to identify them, and most importantly, create space for doing less instead of piling on more. We dive into vulnerable moments and address a topic that affects us all. We think you're really going to love this episode, so let's get into it.
Last year at lunchtime, I called him. I was like, hey, how's it going? He's like, good. I'm like, so vasectomies are reversible, right? And he was like,
No. Work.
Bless your heart.
I waited like 2 years for we waited like 2 years for the vasectomy, and I was like, no, we're done, and now I'm like,
I know. And you know what someone said to me? They were like, part of it is when your kids get out of that like squishy baby phase, it's almost like, do you want another one or do you miss when your kids were young?
Yeah.
And for me, it's a combination because I always thought I'd have more than two, but anyway, my husband's old, so.
Don't do it.
Are we recording?
Yeah, but don't worry.
This is just the warm up.
Yes.
So today on vasectomies.
Eric and I were chatting about the MotherLoad, and we were like, number one, the first thing that comes to mind is like a spaceship.
Oh, the mothership.
oh, that's why I was like, what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're super curious, what is the MotherLoad? And also for me, like when I hear the MotherLoad, I'm like, oh, okay, it's just for mothers. And so who is the MotherLoad for and what is it?
Do you want me to jump in right now?
Yeah.
Okay, it's like, first of all, what isn't it? When you think about the MotherLoad, and it is like everything we carry in our minds, and it's Glennon Doyle who used the analogy of that CNN 24/7 ticker that just goes nonstop in our brains. And CJ, I love what you asked because it's not about being a mother and carrying a child or nurturing a child. It's about like the roles that you are mothering. And we also talk at length about like mothering in the workplace and our role as women and the things that it's Erin Gallagher on LinkedIn is amazing, but it's like the things that become the she fault, right? In everything that we do. And so we can touch on all of those things. So the MotherLoad is just simply what we carry and what we do simply because, at least for myself, identifying as a woman. And that can, again, range from organizing our kids' schedules to the birthday list in the office staff room that is often offloaded to us. The she fault just simply being so many things are just automatically placed onto women because of, that nurturing role that we play. And so we carry these huge loads, sometimes like, without our informed consent, I'll say, because I know that we're consenting to a lot of the different things that we do, but we're just doing them because that's how it's always been done. And it is really difficult to go against that grain and to challenge that because, then we become difficult, aggressive, insert any other lovely adjective.
Well, it's pretty convenient, right? And people get used to it being a certain way. So it's inconvenient when that starts to shift. When, and I think a lot of it too is it's not necessarily, us versus them type thing, but being aware of the things that we carry that we don't know we've chosen to carry. And I think a lot of it is becoming aware of what are all the things, the little mental checklists, the way that we just navigate setting the emotional tone of a room, that has a load.
Yes.
And what if we stop caring for that and allow others to take responsibility for the way they're showing up in a room? And for me, that was a big part of it. It was like noticing all the ways that I smooth the edges.
Well, and like set the temperature almost, like walk in and be like, okay, this room's a little chilly. Like, I'll take on the responsibility of like turning up the temperature.
Yeah. And that, wouldn't it be nice? And I didn't know I was doing it, but and it wasn't other people's fault, but wouldn't it be nice to not have to do that?
Not carry that load.
Exactly. And so, but also it also creates an enabling thing too. So I think, well, this happens in relationships, whether we know it or not. How are we showing up? What things are we carrying? But then it also comes into, when I think of the MotherLoad, I think I texted this to you one day. Matt and I and the kids were at an event and we were doing a walk. It was a big day. And we went on the walk for reconciliation and the kids were in the powwow and it was just a full day. And I tracked 3,000 more steps than he did. And we were doing the same exact thing. And so there's also an objective way to measure it because, I like science. And it's not something against him, but it was all the little ways that I did the checkpoints that he didn't ask me to do, but I just did. And it accumulates physically, but then also emotionally.
So how do we even begin to almost like unpack that, because I'm like, obviously you've given some really tangible examples, but I'm like, how do we identify where we're carrying this mother load in our lives, and then how do we begin to be like to show up different, and to not enable or be like, walk through the mental process of like, do I want to carry this load? Do I want to take this on? Do I want this to look different? Like, what does all that look like?
For me, it starts with us. And this is part of that self-care piece as well, but taking responsibility for the way that we are and the way that we exist and not blaming another. And it's exploring ourselves. And if we can't sense into what feels okay or not okay, or sense when we're feeling overwhelmed, then it's hard to communicate to others what you're going to step away from or step into. And I think it can be a communication. It can be done in a thoughtful and intentional way rather than, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yes.
Because that's from a place of overwhelm, reaction.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's so tied into our connection to ourselves. And then it's individual. Every person is different. And how we communicate with others and pass that transition off, I think is really important too.
Yeah, it's that, checking in before checking within. And I think we're so guilty of like checking within and going back to like making sure, okay, the temperature in the room is that everything is good. I know, you was talking with Dr. Jody Carrington. It's like making sure every person's lid is on. Meanwhile, like ours is not. But like, we're doing what we can to make it appear that way. Yeah. Is everyone happy? Are we happy? Are we happy? But it's just like checking in and just like acknowledgement, as we know, is the first step to anything. So just like acknowledging that there's so many things at play. There is a system that we're still existing and that was designed for 1950 households that were heterosexual couples that typically, almost always, the woman was working at home, so worked from home full time. And we're still like many of our larger organizations are still operating that way. And so tell me how, as women and mothers, we're supposed to thrive when we're battling a system that is just not designed for the world that we're currently living in either. And I think that that's when, we talk about the mother load being, no, it's about like nurturing and mothering. By no means is this for the listener going, oh, but I'm childless, or I don't have this, I don't relate. It's like, then we got to talk about all the other ways that you're mothering people, because I can guarantee.
Which, go into that, go off. What are some other ways?
Oh my God. Like again, so like just going into the office, like what are you doing to keep your office regulated? Who are you working for? Are you someone's handler in your workplace more often than not? When you think about that executive in the office who's constantly like losing their crap, what do you do to like set the temperature before a meeting? How are you communicating things that maybe aren't even yours to communicate? Are you the one saying, oh, maybe we should have an agenda? I think it would be better if people knew what they were coming into. Do we want water? Do we have beverages? Who's ordering the meals to come in? Oh, I know a great team building activity, potlucks. Oh, who makes all the food for potlucks?
Like birthdays, remembering the birthdays of everybody, like all of those unpaid roles that are the glue for a workplace culture.
Yeah.
I would say majority of the glue comes from a maternal energy.
Yes.
Whatever that is.
Yes.
You know, and it can be in men too, but are we in choice there? I often wonder. And are we even aware we're doing that at work?
Right. And are we just kind of towing a line that we think we have to? And Adrianne, I love how you said, like, are we in choice there? Because that's where we go back to the system that's at play. And that's where I don't ever want to be in this like, oh, choose happiness. Are you kidding me? There's systems and environments, and it's not that easy. And so there are going to be spaces in your life where you just don't get to choose a different option. And that's where it's like, no, this is for the higher level executives when we're talking workplace. This is for those who are making decisions to start making inclusive decisions. And all this, you know, we need to actively move towards better DEI work. But are we also talking
What's
about
DEI?
like diversity, equity, and inclusion?
thank you.
You know, are we also including our women and our mothers in those conversations too, and what that looks like? And yeah, like it's just, it shows up. It's a horrible game of whack-a-mole of just like, what's next? What's next? What's next? It's hard.
I'm interested in how, because you spoke and said that a lot of the times we're not aware of it. So I'm interested if you can share in your own lives, because obviously you're speaking about this now. So I'm like, I feel like there's been some self-reflection along the way. So I'm wondering if you'd be able to give us some examples of maybe what it looked like maybe before you recognized this in your own life, and maybe some of the ways that you found this happening that surprised you.
Oh my gosh.
I can speak to it on a couple of levels. From a personal level, it was just me getting to a point where I was tired a lot and I wasn't feeling the spark. And so it set me on many years of exploring what is that, and coming to the decision and through therapy and a lot of support in that, recognizing my role in it, and just even in small ways. So at home, for instance, recognizing where am I feeling tension and resentment. Usually that's a really good sign that it's something that I don't want to carry anymore. I need to communicate about. And I would just be resentful, wear the martyr hat and do it, instead of actually going, oh, okay, well, if I communicate that, because I have a really great partner who wants to support me. I'm fortunate that way. So for me, it was simple things of communicating that, like, in the morning, I don't love lunches. I don't like making them. It doesn't light me up. I'm not one of those moms who writes notes to my kids. I mean, if you do, awesome. It does not light me up. And it was starting my day off in a bad way. And there's other places in the morning that I can be really helpful with. And my husband loves making lunches. He likes food. He likes to get the groceries. So I'm like, you're already getting the groceries. So that was one thing I just communicated. We shifted our morning routine. Bliss. I wake up, I have my electrolytes and my coffee, and I feel good. And then at work, as an employer, this is still something I'm working with, figuring out and trying to navigate, become aware of where I'm stepping in and taking on things that I don't need to be, because I'm trying to be helpful.
Hello, that's me.
Yes. And so it's still ongoing for me with that, but working with that pattern for me, because I'm a helper. I like to just do. And so for me, it's my thing for this year is not doing and more being and creating space just for the sake of space, which is hard. That's my ramble.
No, that's so good.
I'm like, my shoulders just drop like listening. I'm like,
I know.
I know. Spend more time with Adrianne. That's my life motto. So that's what I do. I just spend more time with Adrianne.
Hey guys, it's CJ. You know how finding the right therapist can feel as daunting as finding a life partner? Well, if you've listened to episode number 65 or 35, then you've heard us chat with Ashley Breland, the boundary therapist. Before I go any further, if you haven't got those episodes yet, they're a must listen for insights on setting effective boundaries. Make sure you go check them out. Ashley's not just a podcast guest. She is the founder of Breland Counseling and Support. Her team offers a compassionate, inclusive space for everyone, especially those dealing with people pleasing, overwhelmed by life, or just seeking to learn more about mental health and boundaries. Breland Counseling stands out as a fat-positive, body-inclusive, and anti-diet practice, focusing on body neutrality to encourage mindful awareness. They can work with anyone living in Saskatchewan and offer in-person or virtual sessions, offering 15-minute free consultations to ensure you can find the best fit for your needs. They offer everything from couples and relationship counseling to support for postpartum and perinatal loss. They work with youth that are over 13. The team at Breland Counseling is dedicated to meeting you where you are with care and respect. Don't miss the chance to feel seen, heard, and understood. Find Breland Counseling and Support on Instagram at Breland Counseling. That's BRELAND Counseling, and online at brelandcounseling.ca. You can also, as you know, head to the show notes for easy access to all the links. You'll also want to make sure you follow their socials for really insightful content on mental health. Again, that's at Breland Counseling on Instagram. Everything's linked in the show notes for you friends.
I know, and I love what you said, like resent is such an indicator. I think we talk about resent in such a way that it's like, you know, we shouldn't be so resentful and, you know, work on these relationships. But it's like, that's your indicator. That's your check engine light. So when you're starting to feel resent, it's like, okay, what am I resentful about? And that just means that that's what I want, right? So if I'm resenting my partner for the time that they're spending doing whatever, that's not the problem. Them taking time to do this is not the problem. The problem is that I want that time. And more than how do I get that time, shifting that conversation to how do we get me that time? Because why is it just on me in my family to figure that out? That's a family. That's me and my partner. You know, we have kids. It's not just for me to treat our partner like a babysitter. And again, I say this from a place of privilege, right? Like I say this that I also have a supportive, involved partner. And so I don't need to like do all the prep and do all the thing just so I can go and take a moment to myself. No, I should just be able to say, communicate like, this is, what I want to do. This is what I need to do. You front loaded at the beginning of the week. Like, how can we make this happen? We make this happen, and you do it. And so using that resent piece for just like that checking in and not shying away from that conflict that happens internally, right? It's like that bad emotion that we're like, ooh, we shouldn't be feeling this. No, just like lean a bit more, into where that resent piece is. And the other huge game changer for me that's a big resource is, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of Eve Rodsky. Mm-hmm. Okay, so she wrote the book Fair Play, and then another one called Find Your Unicorn Space, which I think both of you would love. Mm-hmm. And there's a Netflix documentary that she is now on or Netflix or Apple has it on Fair Play. But it's actually breaking down. She spent years studying all of the tasks of a household. Everything. Ooh. And she's built a card game, kind of like and I hate even using this reference, but like a Cards Against Humanity style. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But like the box of cards, I need to think of a different reference where
apples is actually
apples to apples and like tacos and burritos. Yes. Okay, that's what we're gonna use. And every task in encouraging couples, if you're in that kind of relationship, to pull out the cards and division of tasks. And her rule, though, is that if you're doing a division of task, you own the rights to that task exclusively. So if you're in charge of garbages, and I mean, we joke about like pink jobs and blue jobs and things like that, but if you're in charge of garbages, you're not in charge of dragging the garbage out to the curb. You're in charge of knowing when is garbage day. When do I need to go around to the whole house to empty the garbage, to fill up the garbage, to drag it out to the curb? You own it, because when we talk about the mother load, we're also the rememberers, and we're the reminders, and we're the calendar. And so we go, hey, can you take that garbage out to the curb? Mm-hmm. Hey, can you remember to do this? Oh, recycling day is tomorrow. Well, that's not really giving us a mental break from carrying that load, right? And her work really speaks to how do we divide that? And the beautiful thing too is it also gives credit where credit's due. That tasks that we're not even familiar, that some people do without saying anything. Not everyone's me where I'm like, look what I did today. Where I'm like, I did this. There's a lot of things happening in silence that we're not acknowledging either. Mm-hmm. And it's a really great task to really sit down and go, okay, what are you doing? What am I doing? Laundry's a big one. Tell me, and again, it's going to be different for every household, but when you say you do the laundry, like, what is that? Is that you remember to start the laundry? Because I always forget to switch it over, and I just thank goodness my husband takes on that task, right? Because everything would just be moldy in a washing machine probably. But, if you own the laundry, does that mean washer to dryer to folding to putting away? Right? Or is the washing and really dividing that up and having those conversations and then letting go of your ownership of those tasks. And that's a hard part for many of us, like you said, when we do wear that martyr hat, because that's what we know what to do. Letting go of then the responsibility of getting it done on your way and your timeline.
Well, and how do we practically let go? Because I'm like, it's one thing to just like almost talk about it in like theory, right? Of like, okay, we're going to let go. And it's like, I'm just going to let it float off. And it's like, I know myself, like I'm going to carry it inside, even if I'm not speaking it for a little bit. Right. And so I'm like, are there some things that you guys have done in your own life, to slowly work through being more and letting go of the load?
I think the letting go piece is based on trust. And start in small ways with tasks that you'd be okay if the outcome was terrible.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
And then slowly build the trust. And then that I think will build the capacity for letting it go. But on things that are major things that I wouldn't feel okay with it tanking, or if I really fully trust and it's been demonstrated that it can be done, I'm thinking like in a workplace too, just going there in my head, then I have no problem letting it go. Yeah. But initially that was hard for me to give up control of tasks and delegating. But how you delegate is in itself such a relational thing, and it's built on communication. Part of it is our own work, but then also a lot of it is, if you think about what's the fear of letting go, I'm not sure, all the unknowns, right? And we're very used to being comfortable and having it an illusion of control. And I think the more we can get comfortable with discomfort as well as a personal practice, then it also makes the letting go more easy. And I know you've talked about in the past about remaining curious. And I think trying to instill that curiosity when there's tension, when there's resentment, when I'm noticing I'm having difficulty letting go. Why? Do I need to communicate something else? Is there something I missed? Is it just that I need to sit in this discomfort for a little bit? And what's that feeling like in my body? And I keep coming back to this, but that's where that embodiment piece I think is foundational. It's going to be performative. It's going to be surface level. It's not going to stick if it's just coming from here and not felt. And that ability to feel at ease comes from feeling, not from thinking. And so to me, it's that those practices, those tools that help us notice sensation. And then this becomes our guidepost to all the different things that we've talked about already.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think embodiment is so interesting because I think, sometimes when I even reflect on my own life, I'll be like, I know it in my mind, but I don't know it in my heart, or my body is sort of how I would represent that. And so I think obviously having you here is fantastic, both of you, but, speaking to the piece of how we work on that mind-body connection, would also be very interesting. Like, how are you cultivating that in your own life?
Yeah. Well, I had experiences that growing up that to cope with things, I became very disembodied. And when we're in the fight or flight freeze response, we are in survival. And that's an important response to help us survive. But it's not a response that we can sense in. So if we're talking about our sympathetic system, which is that go mode, that, in extreme cases, it's fight, flight, or freeze, and the parasympathetic system, which is I feel safe. And you're more in that rest, digest, relaxation. You can only sense internal sensation through the parasympathetic system. So if
we're disconnected if we're not in it.
Yes. So that's why it's so important. And I want to repeat this again, because disembodiment is not your fault. It's not something you haven't done right, But there are things that you can do to come back home to self, to feel again. And it doesn't have to be all in or all, we actually want to be able to move in and out of these systems. And the survival part of our nervous system is so important. And so is the feeling safe. And it takes practice. And just if people, listeners right now, just start with noticing what you sense in terms of the temperature. Or sense if you're feeling thirsty, or if you have to go to the bathroom even. And start to sense what the floor feels like underneath you, what the surface of the, chair, or just sensing into really basic sensations, internally, externally. Just the act of noticing sensation, that's happening through your parasympathetic. So even if you can't control your breath yet, even if you can't, feel what's right or wrong from your heart, if you're sensing into your body, you're moving the needle towards more ease. And that can be expanded upon. And when you notice times where you're really stressed and you can't sense, if some people overeat, some people forget to drink water because we aren't in the sensations of our body's not communicating what it needs when we're in that hypervigilant state. So those are just some small tangible things that we can build upon.
I love that. I need a drink of water.
I don't drink water. No, but it's true. And then when you take that beautiful summary back and, reflect in yourself, when are we even giving ourselves time to find that pause, to check in? And just what Adrianne very briefly guided us through, and I hope whether you're driving that you didn't close your eyes, but it's but when are we having the time as we are rushing? And I mean, this could be also me projecting my life, but it's you're getting up, you're rushing to before school programs so that you can get to work, so you can get to the office. You're probably already late for that meeting. And then you're rush. You're skipping your lunch break because, oh my gosh, you probably have to leave early because hockey ice times are absurd. And it's parents don't work full time. It'll be at 3:35 today. Okay. So then you're going and you're rushing and you're getting your kid and you're throwing them in the car. And then, I forgot to pack them an extra lunch because I already have to pack them one for the day. Who loves packing lunches? Matt, I guess. And then
God bless Matt.
Right? Matt's now going to do this.
For real.
And then you're hitting some drive-through to again, no shade of drive-through. Nourishment is nourishment. But then you're throwing whatever you can at the kids in the back to eat, to get to this practice, to get home, to be oh my gosh, we didn't do our reading, we didn't do our school. This is the life. And we were talking about this actually last night, but this is the life we're choosing.
Yes.
We're registering our children in all of these activities. We're doing this.
Yeah.
And again, amazing if this is what everybody wants and this is working for you. But is it working for you? Get curious, not judgmental, but curious about yourself and why you're doing it. Don't be getting curious as to why Karen is doing it, poor Karen, or not. Get curious, why are we doing this? Does this work for our family? Is this schedule working for us? Because we're just we are go, because I feel we're just digesting so many societal expectations. Mm-hmm. And, we don't like judgment and we don't like to be different. And, oh my goodness, we really don't have a window of tolerance for discomfort, and something bubbles up inside of us. And when that feeling bubbles up, rather than just checking in and taking a moment to be what is this? We find that distraction and, we are very quickly scrolling, binging on Netflix, adding things to our carts because we're oh, this feels uncomfortable. Where's the dopamine? And, that's just where we're going. And it's whoa, stop. Just stop. Stop for 5 seconds. Yeah. And do what Adrianne led us through.
And I think societal norms are saying that, put our kids into all these things. But the evidence says don't. Mm-hmm. Don't specialize. Even though all the programming now, even with soccer, basketball, there's clubs and it's multiple times a week. It doesn't allow for multiple sports. And actually what the evidence says is don't specialize. Mm-hmm. And when we're looking at if you want to bring your kid, you want your kid to go to the Olympics or whatever it is, NHL, the evidence actually shows you early specialize, you don't make it there. And they did that. Anyway, I won't get into the study, but they're finding is kids that early specialize, their hips and knees look like that of a end of career professional athlete. Like physiologically, it's not okay. Not to mention mental health. Like it's what we see in the safe sport when we get told to take that course, and then you're signing your kid up for like everything that they say not to do in the course. And I'm like, is this? And as a physio, I'm like, I don't feel okay with this. Yes. So yes, I think and normalize it. And like you said, if that's right for a family, great. And if the child is great. But why are we killing ourselves over this? And we're yelling, get out that door. You're eating in the car. Like, is this really good for us? Are we even asking ourselves the question if it's too much? I think if we just start to, again, get curious, but ask, is this too much?
And we talk about, guilt, and it's like, I never want to like downplay mom guilt or, just the guilt we carry because it's real. But it's like, is it guilt or is it just discomfort? Right? Like, are we saying that like, oh, mom guilt, but they really want to? It's like, or do we just have a really hard time saying no to our kids and that little look on their face that I get all the time because I say no so much, and I try to find great yeses too. Yeah. But like, life is also different than it was when I was a child. It's a different world. There wasn't so much specialized activities either.
Well, I was just going to say, it just creates more and more of a gap between those that can and those that aren't able to do that. And who ends up being the one that takes time off work to facilitate that? I often wonder.
I don't wonder. No,
Lisa knows. But and maybe not all the time. But anyway, it leads into all of the things that we're discussing, and for what and at what cost. Is it actually a choice, or is it because so and so is doing it? And that envy piece we talked about in the MotherLoad in the past. Maybe you can speak to it more, but I think that's really important when we're talking about this, because if that's at the heart of it, I think, is this comparison. When we're outside of ourselves looking for the answer here, then maybe this will be the thing, maybe this will be the thing. And then really what we're doing is it's envy.
Yeah, it is.
But you can speak more to it then.
Well, I mean, really, it's Adam Grant that spoke to it the best, right? When, forever Brene Brown would always say that, comparison is the thief of joy. I think that's kind of where the research was going. And then Adam took it one step further based on even her research saying, comparison's not the thief of joy, envy is. And I was scrolling, probably doom scrolling in bed when I'm not supposed to. And it just like was the light bulb, because that's it. And he spoke to too. It's like comparison. I mean, that's so normal, and we should want comparison, right? That's how we like look around, and that's where we can set goals or like, okay, this is great. But it's the envy that gets us in trouble. It's the envy that forces us to do things outside of our body.
Yeah. Which like envy is wanting, right?
Yeah.
Correct? Like what they have, not just like observing a comparison, but being
curious.
Like,
no, it's like wanting
a deep desire to have or take.
And fill something up. What are we trying to fill?
That's what it is too. I think with the envy, it's like, even when we, shopping all the links and adding to cart as we're scrolling, do you need the thing, or do you want the life that the person is having? Yes. Is it about the little vacuum for the drawer, which I always use as an example because I think I do want one for the crumbs. But
you mentioned it a few times, so I think this might be actually something you need.
Add to list.
It's come up multiple times. Pull this clip.
Right? But like, is that, or is it the thing, something else that I'm seeing and feeling while I'm watching it being used that I'm trying to get? And what an empty feeling we're trying to fulfill.
And so true. And how do we stop being envious? Like, it's not just like a cognitive process. Like, yes, you can notice it, but I think that comes back to a practice as well, a physiological practice. Because when there was a study done on different types of meditation, mindfulness meditation versus a focused meditation, it was the mindfulness meditation that actually created the physiological changes in reduced, heart rate, actual inflammatory markers went down because of the non-judgment piece. So mindfulness is coming into the present moment, as meditation is, but in a non-judgmental way. And you can practice that, and it actually creates more of a physiological shift. So maybe the need to want or fill something would be less. In that way too, I'm wondering as
well, and I think about, like, for me, when you guys were talking, I was thinking about, like, we don't have enough time reflecting.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's something that I'm trying to incorporate into this year is just more time to be like, just let me think, you know, think about, and I guess mindful would be another word that could be synonymous with that, you know, but it's like, I think we just busy ourselves so much. We're go, right? And it's like, we don't just have enough time to reflect, to meditate, to be mindful, to just think about what's going on, the choices that we're making.
To process something, to just have space for the sake of space.
Yeah.
And that ties into so much of what we talked about, but that over scheduling. We can create the schedule that is also within our power. And having space for the sake of space so that you can notice, because when my life gets so overscheduled, I also get overwhelmed, not just the schedule, but I can't keep pace with the amount of things that I need to be getting in and out. And it just gets in. And then I don't function well. I'm not a good mother, friend, boss, like therapist. Like I'm not my whole self when I'm filled up with stuff that I need to get out of me. And that's when I start to look at them.
But I think that's true for everyone, but we're just not all reaching that level of awareness. But I don't think you can do that until you really, like, promise yourself curiosity instead of judgment. Like, really making a promise to yourself where it's like, okay, I'm going to take this minute, or I'm going to take this pause, or I'm going to do this thing. And whether you're writing something out or whatever that looks like, and if you've never done it, oh my gosh, like, do work with a therapist, because the journey inward is scary if you've never done it. And so do the work of just like, what's coming up for you the most? What are the concerns? And now how do you shift that from, like, rather than even the voice in your head being a statement, could we just like have an intonation and make that a question? Right? So instead of like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Right? Just like gentle. Just, you know, and again, the age old, treat yourself like a friend. But I think there's just different ways that we can implement those practices where we're just getting curious. It is about curious, and it's not about judgment, but we go into judgment. And like, the last thing we need as women and mothers is like more of us also, you know, shooting all over ourselves and coming at ourselves, you know? And so can we just like, just get curious? Can we try that practice on, knowing that we're also going to screw it up 100% of the time?
Yeah.
But you can't get it right until you actually get it wrong a million times first. Yeah. That's okay.
I have two lines one for my personal life and myself, and one that I use at work. I didn't realize I did this one at work until the staff started saying it to me, and I was like, oh. But at work, I'll say, let's circle back on that. Mm-hmm. It just, where can we create pause between the response? Like, okay, that's a good question. Okay, thanks for that feedback. Let me circle back on that. Because often our initial response is not the best one.
Question for you guys. How do you feel about boundaries? Are you for them, against them? Do you struggle setting them or even respecting them? I won't lie, whenever the conversation turns to boundaries, I get slightly uncomfortable, and that's because I suck at setting them and I'm even worse at keeping them. This has always been a struggle for me, and for the longest time, I just didn't know how to navigate them. That wasn't until we sat down with Ashley Breland right here on the Her Podcast. If you listened to episode 35, then you heard our conversation with Ashley, who's known as the boundary therapist, and you got to hear all about the impactful work she does with clients around boundary work, and you likely learned a lot, like I did, about how to set boundaries, different types of boundaries, and the challenges we all face setting and maintaining them. If you listen to the episode and want more from Ashley, then you're in luck. What you may not know is that Ashley founded Breland Counseling and Support. And along with her team, they are expanding the practice, taking on new clients and offering incredible services to you so you can find support to care for yourself and your mental health in a safe and inclusive space. The team at Breland Counseling are committed to meeting people where they're at with unwavering care, compassion, and respect. They provide an incredible space designed with you in mind for all bodies to feel comfortable, safe, and welcome, allowing you to feel supported in sharing and leaving you feeling seen, heard, and understood. Breland Counseling is a fat positive, body inclusive, and anti-diet practice. The team practices from a lens of body neutrality to promote mindful awareness of one's body. They work to assist folks to decrease body judgment, positive or negative, and focus on supporting folks to see themselves beyond their bodies. The team offers therapeutic services to Saskatchewan residents in person at the Breland Counseling offices, virtually and over the phone, in-home and on-site. You can find Breland Counseling and Support on Instagram at Breland Counseling. That's BRELAND COUNSELLING, and online at brelandcounseling.ca, where you can book in online with the team and find the type of session that supports you best. We will link all of the information in on our show notes for you to easily find.
Again, you have to start with carving out the time. And you know, when we were talking, and just like a couple of simple tweaks that I've even made for that, it's like, you know, we all talk about the bubble bath and that's fine. But for me, I, the other night, put my, like, not my AirPod, like my earplugs in and had a bath. And like tune out the noise of my home. And it was blissful. And again, no screen, like nothing. It was just like, oh, because I didn't realize it even when I decided to take that time. I mean, you still have like, even if my partner keeps them away from the door where they just suddenly need to come in and like usually like have a bowel movement, I'm like, whoa, like, you know, but you're trying to have this like time to yourself, and it's like, but the noise, and I can't just turn it off. Like I can't just like not hear them asking for something and be like, they're in the fridge. And it's like, whoa, they've got their dad who can answer that question. And it's like, I use that. And it was like, I will never take another bath without just putting in my loops.
That's a great tip.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, well, this is nice. You know, but it is taking that. But the other thing, and I learned from Adrianne, and I remember one time I always like would listen to something on my like walk from my parking to my office and back, and Adrianne's like, I wonder like what happens when you don't also fill your brain with so much noise. You know, and I was like, oh, shots fired, Vangool.
Notice it was in the form of a question.
You know, but it was.
Good job, Adrianne.
Right?
I wonder.
Right?
I wonder.
It's true. So you'll notice, right? So if you think about these voices, the curious voice has like Adrianne's.
I love it.
Versus like the judgment voice has like my tone. This is where like the yin and the yang. But it was like, oh my, yeah, because I'm still doing that. Like I'm like listening to a podcast and I'm walking to work and it's like, whoa. Yeah. And so I stopped.
Yeah.
Or just driving and I turned the radio off. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this is how I'm decompressing. And my shoulders drop. And I allow the thoughts to come in that likely need to be worked out to help me transition into like the longest, worst hours of the day, which are from 5 until 7 p.m.
Well, and it's like, how do we get to know ourselves without spending time with ourselves?
Exactly. I think we're so disconnected from ourselves, and then we're not feeling fulfilled by the external connections.
Yeah.
Because they're not landing.
Yeah.
I don't think you can really receive a deep, meaningful connection if you're not really connected to yourself. And how do you know what's, again, like I said at the beginning, but how do you know we're just then ping-ponging if we're disconnected from ourselves? And I'm not saying that that's an easy thing to do. And like you mentioned, it's important to do that, especially if you've experienced certain levels of trauma or just need a guide of how to go there. It's good to ask for help.
Yes.
And I think we used to have this so built into the way that we lived our lives, these natural pauses. Like even when I was growing up back in the day before internet,
amen, sister.
Like there would be, I mean, I'm going to sound so kind of hippie right now, but my favorite part of the day was running from my house across the field to school. And it was always a run because I loved feeling the wind. I can remember this now. I loved having time to climb the trees and like sway. But that's just, I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, that was just regulation.
Yeah. Like, and a national champion pole vaulter.
Well, no.
I just like to sprint and
Slide
feel
that
the
in there.
wind.
I'm teasing it into the tree.
Like I was like, also like I just am gonna like name the elite athlete that's beside me. It's like I just like love the
she
feeling.
Water. I don't feel as bad anymore. It's like a part of the gym.
Oh gosh, do a deep dive on this
That's how
Hall
I
of
regulate.
Famer.
I move my body,
Yes.
right? So if I can't, or I'm not like physically, I don't land.
Yeah.
And when I travel, it's the same way. I got to get outside. I got to smell the air. But these are also like inherent to all of us as human beings. We regulate through our senses. And so if we're not providing the environment for that to happen, I think in our society today, the reason why everybody is so, okay, this is not evidence-based. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the reasons why we're all overwhelmed is our society is not set up right now to have those windows of pause without stimulation. So we have to, recognize it now and take ownership of it and create it then.
Yes.
Because it's not just going to happen.
Yes.
The emails aren't just going to stop.
No.
You have to put the I'm on vacation
Yes.
or don't look at your phone. Like we have to really be diligent in that, I think now, so that we can feel regulated.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
Right?
Right?
And I mean, there are so many things that are coming out now that I think can help us. And it's just taking that first step to implement that, like I think about simple things, like even like your phone, right? Like it has like do not disturb. It has like focus time. It has, notifications to like turn off your apps, like all of those things. Right. And it's just like taking the step to like try and implement some of that.
Totally.
If you choose.
And again, as our good friend Ashley, the boundary therapist, like we have to do the hard work of setting the boundaries.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to do the hard work of putting the phone down, the out of office, not responding to that email that comes in, because the standard and expectation has been there that we do.
Yeah.
So why would we stop? And there's going to be tension when we don't. That doesn't mean that we're going to lose our job. Tension is not a bad thing.
No.
It's
human.
And again, I'm like, I'm going to let
It's
the
natural.
physiotherapist talk more about tension than the social worker. No, but it's, and I mean, again, learning so much from you, but tension's not bad. Like that's just where we propel ourselves to the next place. But until we set those firm, hard boundaries that work for us, no one's coming to set them for us.
Yeah.
Well, it's like being okay with the tension and discomfort,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Change has never occurred without tension. You see it in nature. Like if you want your muscle to stretch, you got to stretch it to the point where you're feeling it. There's tension there. And it's the same thing with nervous system patterns, like relational patterns. I think we just run away from the smallest spot of tension, but that's an opportunity for change. It's not, like you said, a bad thing, but we avoid it all the time.
Or we busy it away as mothers, right? So now we're taking everyone's tension and we're like, we're going to get this dealt with. We're going to get this dealt with. We're going to get this dealt with. I do not want conflict here. I do not want this. And then we are just carrying all of it. But like we are like internally as well. Like that takes out so much, like it puts so much strain on our bodies and our minds. So much.
Well, again, we're not responsible even, I don't know if we can go here, but like for other people's actions, right? And how they choose to respond. And so
Right.
I think, sometimes as women, but we take on, okay, I'm going to like, should this or do this or insert myself or take on that load. And then there's a reaction on the other side. And then we take responsibility for also that action as well. And it's like coming to a place where it's like, we take responsibility for the autonomy of like our bodies, right? And our responses, and understand that that's really all we have in control of and can
Absolutely.
focus on, right?
Yeah.
And of course, there's going to be a response to us deciding to change.
It's just, we're housing all of it. And it's just, again, that invitation to yourself to be like, okay, what can I set down and maybe never pick up again? And also know that the tension with that comes knowing that, of course, it's never going to be done the way that you do it. It's not you doing it. And that's now the choice you have, where it's like, is it going to be your way, or is it just not going to be your problem? Because the freedom that exists in not my problem is really a beautiful thing. I love not getting groceries. I love it. It is like, talk about being overstimulated. Like, I didn't realize, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is not what I need to be doing on my 2 precious days off. It's too much. And fortunately, having someone who's picked that up great. You know, and there's freedom in just like letting it go and letting it be.
No, I think something I'm really taking away, which, you know, I've already talked about, but I think is this curious piece, right? This is a big piece in the motherload and in what we're carrying and our responsibilities and our choices, just getting curious and inner reflecting, you know, on what we're doing internally. Lisa will know this, but at the end of every episode, we ask a question. And I can't remember, Lisa, if this was the same question because we swapped our question way back when.
Okay.
But it may be the same. It may be different. I couldn't remember and I didn't go look. The motherload. It's fine. It's all okay that I didn't go look.
Exactly. Good.
I'm sitting here going,
and you didn't apologize. You just went, it's okay. Moving on. I'm like, I love this.
It is what it is.
But I'd love to know from you guys, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, you've ever received, or that you like to give?
Can I have two answers?
Yes, please.
Okay, I can't say the best, but it might be the best. It's the one that's coming to mind right now. And it was from Heather from Rock and Bloom. And she said, if you're going to bet on anyone, bet on yourself. And it was when I was in this like shifting, this change point where like there was some fear in that. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to bet on myself. And I'm just so happy I did. And then the other piece that I often tell people is take your self-care very seriously because you're that important. And I think we think of it as a soft skill or if there's time, but take it as seriously as you take anything else.
So good.
Oh, I was like, this is probably, I think it might be a similar question, a similar answer where it's evolved and it's, you know, started with my dad in a transition time, but where it's moved into now is like, I'm really the only one overthinking what I've decided to do. And so when I've released myself from that, going like, oh, like they're not overthinking this. They're not losing sleep over this. They're not worried about this. It's just me. Like, it's actually my way of taking control back and then betting on myself. And it's a way to stop that overthinking for me. Is just really going like, it's just me. It's just me doing this. Stop worrying about everyone else.
Release the pressure. Yeah, from so much. Oh, amazing. Okay, well, ladies, we've had such a great conversation with you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. Let our listeners know where they can find you if they want to get connected and follow you guys, or anything else that you guys want to shout out.
All right. You can find me at vangoolwellness.com and on Instagram at Vangool Wellness. And we have a physiotherapy and wellness clinic in Saskatoon. And then I talk a little bit more about some of the concepts we talked today in my book, The Journey of Self-Care to We Care.
Yes, and people can get that book anywhere, like on Amazon, from your website.
Yeah, website. It's at McNally Robinson, Turning the Tide. And you can request it from your bookstore and they'll order it in.
Amazing. I think if anyone is interested in the topic we talked about today, they should definitely check it out.
And for me, like right now, I think Instagram at Lisa Greig Wellness is the best place.
Yeah.
To find me and follow along. And I'm, you know, very inconsistent in my posting, but I'm there. It's a beautiful community. So everyone's welcome.
Love it. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
It's so fun.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.